Thank you everyone for joining us today for the Admitted MBA Students webinar series. We are really excited today to be sitting down to chat with Caroline Diarte Edwards, who is the co-founder and director at Fortuna Admissions. And as a former director of admissions, marketing, and financial aid for the INSEAD MBA program, where she admitted over 7,000 students, Caroline has extensive expertise in the business school sector, which is one of the reasons that we invited her to join us today. Caroline started her career in London as a management consultant for Anderson. Post-MBA, she joined the International Finance Corporation in a business development role, and she has lived and worked in the UK, France, Germany, Switzerland, the US, India, Singapore, and Indonesia. A leader among industry experts, Caroline is regularly featured in the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, CNN, The Economist, the Times of London, China Economic Review, Spiegel, and the New York Times, and obviously, of course, RelishCareers now as well. Caroline holds an MBA from INSEAD and is a graduate of the University of Cambridge. So Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today. Certainly a very impressive CV, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and jump right into the questions with all that admissions expertise. This webinar is really intended for folks who are currently applying, thinking about applying, or have already been admitted to school. And our first question focuses on sort of the early stages of the process, and then we'll sort of work our way through. So the first question, for people still researching schools and applying, how to be sure that their target list contains the right set of schools, and what are some of the important criteria to consider that might get overlooked by some applicants when thinking about where to apply?
Sure, it's a great question, Zach. I think the mistake that candidates can often make is that they jump to conclusion too quickly about the schools that they should apply to, and it may be on the basis of rankings, it may be on the basis of where their colleagues have gone to business school, what friends and family think, and so often candidates are drawn quite quickly to a short list of schools without really thinking widely about their options. And, schools really care about whether the candidate has done their due diligence and thought very carefully about their motivation and their fit with the school that they're applying to. And so, if you haven't gone through that process of research and deep reflection and made the effort to get to know the school, extensively before you decide if you're going to commit to applying, then it can very much undermine your chances of admission. So I would encourage candidates to, first of all, start the process early. You don't want to be thinking about which schools you should be applying to 6 weeks before the application deadlines. You should be thinking about it at least 6 months in advance, if not further in advance. And then, if possible, visit schools. That's really the best way to learn about the programs. You can learn so much online these days, and that's fantastic, and it's a great resource to be able to interact with the schools, read about the schools, watch student videos, learn about the faculty. There's a wealth of incredible information available online, but there is still no replacement for actually, getting on the campus, meeting staff, meeting students, meeting, the whole community, and getting a first-hand gut feel for whether that's the right environment for you. And, I know people who've done that, and they visited a school that they were thinking about applying to, and they've come away totally inspired and completely passionate about that school. And that, really turbocharges their application, because that excitement and passion shines through in their application. And conversely, I've known people who've visited schools where, they were completely convinced beforehand, and then they've come away after the visit and thought, actually, it's not the right fit for me. It's not the right community. And so they've changed their minds. And so it's very important to figure that out before you apply. Because, as I said, it can make a big difference to your chance of admission if you show that deep insight and you show that passion. That will enhance your chance of admission. And of course, it's a huge investment of time and money that you're going to be making. And so making the right choice is absolutely, so critically important. I was talking to someone recently who has just started at one of the M7 schools, and she's not happy, and she's thinking about leaving and maybe, going down a completely different path. And what a terrible shame to have got to that point and achieved so much to get admitted to the school that so many people are desperate to go to, and it's not the right fit for her, and she hadn't realized beforehand. So you don't want to get into that situation. So if at all possible, visit school, and then beyond that, reach out to people in your network, talk to people who have attended the program, talk to current students, talk to potential target employers and get their perspective on the schools that they like to recruit from and what people gain from different programs. So there are lots of ways that you can learn about programs, and as I said, a wealth of information that is available to people now, much more information than was available 15, 20 years ago when I was applying to business school. There's so many opportunities to learn now about schools, but still, no replacement for actually getting on the campus and sitting in on a class and visualizing whether that's the right environment for you to be in.
Yeah, I think that is great advice, and I think really given what you talked about in terms of the investment that you're about to make, if you have the opportunity at all, I think given you're going to be spending so much time there with the people on campus, if you can make it to campus for a visit, that is a really important thing and may, as you said, sort of help you understand where you might be a better fit than other places, even if it might not be an M7 program, which is sort of the gold standard. So I think that's great advice, and thank you for sharing it. This is about applicants or individuals who have applied and are waiting on their admissions decisions. What can those applicants do to improve their prospects and prepare themselves for business school while waiting on admissions decisions?
Yeah, there's lots of things that they can do. So first of all, I would say, continue to learn about the school and continue to interact with the community. It's possible that you might get waitlisted, and so in that scenario, you need to be reinforcing your understanding of the school, reinforcing your network, and so continue to do that. And in any case, that effort will pay dividends if you get offers from multiple schools and you need to make a decision between schools. If you continue to stay in touch, to continue to network, continue to build and extend your knowledge of the program and the community, then you'll be in a better position to make a choice at the end of the day. And also think about your plan B, right? Or maybe your plan C if things aren't going to work out. Especially if you're applying to the very top schools, there's no guarantees of any outcomes. And so do think about, if it doesn't work out, what are you going to do next? And otherwise, if you've just applied, so if you've just submitted an application and you're waiting to hear if you've been selected for interview, then now is a great time to make a start on your preparation for the interview stage. You should definitely start thinking about that before you get the call to interview. Sometimes when candidates get the invitation to interview, they might not have very long to prepare. They might get the invitation and be interviewing, within a few days. So definitely, once you've submitted your applications, use that time then to begin preparing the next stage and hoping that you get to interview stage. Think about the typical questions that will be asked. Inform yourself about the interview format. Different schools have quite different interview formats these days, and you can have a very different experience if you're interviewing with Stanford versus Harvard versus Wharton versus INSEAD, etc. So learn about what you should expect and practice. Try to get someone to put you through your paces. There's nothing like practice to make perfect, and you don't want to be over rehearsed, but you do want to have practice. Be asked some of the likely questions that you will probably get. And so, preparing that over a period of time can help you feel comfortable and relaxed when you get to that, that critical interview stage.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a natural instinct once you submit your applications to sort of, wipe your brow and think that you've finished, but really the interview stage is just as important as the application itself. And And as somebody who went through a few interviews myself going into business school, they are definitely different at different institutions. And so I think preparing for the individual differences is a really good piece of advice for folks who are just sort of, who think they may have finished the application process, but have another couple of steps to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for sharing that. You also, during your answer, you mentioned again sort of staying in contact with the network at the schools that you've applied to, and how that can really help when you have decisions when you've been admitted to multiple schools. And that sort of speaks to our next question about how applicants should decide between the schools to which they've been accepted. And when thinking about this, kind of a related question, how should students balance factors like ranking versus perhaps financial aid or cost?
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision to make, and it's a great position to be in. All right, first of all, congratulations if that's your situation, because that's a dream for so many candidates to have that opportunity to be the one making the choice at the end of the day. So I would say, take your time. If possible, again, visit the campus. Right. So if you haven't done so already, then now is the time to get there and get a first-hand sense for the environment, for the community, visualize yourself there for 1 year, 2 years, whatever the duration of the program, and think carefully about whether that's the right environment and the right community for you. So I think that gut feel is very important. Then beyond that, think about what are the most important things for you that you're going to get out of the program. And I would encourage candidates to take a long-term perspective. I know that it can be difficult if you've got, for example, an offer from an M7 school where you have no scholarship and no financial support, and then you've got perhaps an offer from a tier 2 school where they're giving you a fantastic scholarship offer, and therefore financially the cost is going to be much less overall. And that can be a very difficult decision for candidates to make, right? I mean, going to a top school and financing it all yourself is a huge commitment. But I would say, take a long-term perspective on this. Think about the long-term impacts of each program and what that's going to give you in the long term. If you go to a top program, it's very likely that you're going to get a good return on an investment, and that payback is going to be fairly fast. So you can bet on your future if you've got into a top school. So I would, when I'm counseling candidates who are in this situation, unless they feel a very strong affinity with, if they've got 2 offers and one school is more prestigious and more highly regarded than the other school, perhaps tier 1 school versus a tier 2 school, but they've got a better financial offer from the second tier school. I would encourage them in most cases to go for the best school that they can get into, to accept the best offer, because in the long term that is going to pay dividends. And it can be very difficult to turn down scholarship offers, and candidates often feel very grateful to schools, and it creates an emotional bond when they've been given this amazing financial aid package, and they're so appreciative of what effort the school has made, and that is incredibly difficult to turn down, because it's it's a wonderful signal of how appreciative the school is of your profile and how much they want you to join the community, and that can be very difficult to refuse. But the long-term perspective is the most important, and so I would think about what are your recruitment prospects at the 2 schools. Look very carefully at what it is that you want to do post MBA, and whether that is a good fit with where people are going after graduating from the schools that you've admitted to. And also look at the alumni network. And I think that the power of the alumni network is something that candidates sometimes underestimate, because they think about, when they're going to business school, what am I going to get out from the year or 2 years at school, and then what job is that going to get me when I graduate? And so they're thinking about a sort of 2 to 3, maybe 4 year time horizon. But the MBA is something that stays with you for the rest of your life, and hopefully pays dividends for the rest of your life. And So think very carefully about which network you're going to be part of and whether that is the right network for you, whether, given your long-term ambitions, will that network be able to open doors for you in the right places, in the right industry, in the right geography? Because, that's something that will stay with you and will add value to your career in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, and so on. And that can be hard to predict because who knows where you're going to be in the future. But if you have a sense of your vision of how you want your career to unfold, then thinking about which alumni network is going to be able to add most value to that vision of your future, I think is really important and something that is often overlooked pre-MBA. And most MBA alumni are hugely appreciative of the network that they're part of, and at the end of the day, that probably has more impact on their career than perhaps actually what they learned while they were at business school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that long-term perspective is something that we try to stress at RelishCareers as well, and doesn't, as you said, often get enough focus pre-MBA. But as you said, it's a sort of lifelong investment, and there are a lot of different factors that can go into determining sort of what is a good return on investment. And alumni networks, one of the things that you brought up that can make a huge difference. But also researching, as you said, I think as well, the companies that hire on the campus that you're headed to, or the campuses that you're considering, because those could be the entree into the career or the industry that you want to launch into. So a lot of different factors, but I think that emphasis on the long-term perspective is really smart. For other candidates in a slightly different situation who are on wait lists, what are some best practices that you recommend? And just to provide a hypothetical, students who maybe were offered admission at a lower ranked school but are waitlisted at a higher ranked school, what's sort of the best practices and the timeline that they should stick to?
Okay. Yeah, it's difficult to be waitlisted, but the good news is the door is still open. So try to focus on the positive. I know often candidates, when they get the waitlist decision, it's a blow and they're disappointed and so on. But take it as you've still got an opportunity to get in and really take advantage of that opportunity. So in the scenario that you mentioned, where a candidate has an offer from one school and waitlist offer from another school, then if those schools are more or less peer schools, then I would suggest forwarding the offer email to the school where you're waitlisted, and let them know, I've had this offer from, if you're waitlisted at for example, say you're waitlisted at Columbia, you've been admitted to Wharton, you can forward that email and let the school know and ask if they're able to make a decision within a certain timeline before you have to commit to the other school. All right. And, if it's a peer school, then it gives you additional credibility. They will see, okay, this candidate has got into this other great school, we should take another look. If it's not a peer school, right, then they may say, well, off you go. You're very welcome to head off to that other school. We're not going to review your file again right now. So think about how you can leverage that other offer. All right. And schools will understand that you have to make a decision with a certain time frame. And if they're able to review your file again, if they have places that come up and they're able to anticipate a decision, then, they will try to accommodate you if the circumstances are right. Okay. What I would say is also, if you're waitlisted, be proactive in staying in touch with the school. Keep a positive tone, right? I mean, when I was admissions director at NCI, I would sometimes have waitlisted candidates who are sort of, resentful in their communications, and that's not how you want to come across, right? You want to be positive and, be upbeat in the way that you approach your interactions with the school, and keep the school appraised of any important changes in your profile. So if you get a promotion, or you complete a project and you get some fantastic results, or or you retake the GMAT and you get a better score, then, you know, keep the score updated and think about, you know, what can you do to improve your profile in the short term. You know, it's worth getting an assessment done of your application and getting some input on, you know, what issues the school might have flagged, what concerns they might have had. I mean, we often work with waitlisted candidates and we'll review their application and give them some input on, you know, what are the hesitations the school had about the hesitations that would likely have been flagged by the admissions committee, and therefore, you know, what could they potentially do to be proactive in mitigating those concerns. So it may be that, you know, their GMAT is slightly below par. So, you know, that's an easy one. Well, it's not an easy one, but it's an obvious one that can be addressed. It may be that, you know, they had not presented certain aspects of their work experience effectively, or, you know, for INSEAD, where I used to work, international experience is hugely important, right? That's a fundamental part of the assessment, and so sometimes candidates haven't really highlighted that effectively. So there may be some things that you can do to mitigate concerns the school may have. So, you know, examine that. And then beyond that, you know, stay in touch about once a month, you know, touch base with your key contact at the school. Don't call them up every day, you know. And when I was admissions director, we would have people who, you know, would be on the phone all the time, and, you know, frankly, were regarded as a pest by the admissions office. And, you know, all schools get that, where you have people who are knocking on the door all of the time. And it doesn't help your chances, all right? So there is a fine balance to strike between, you know, being proactive and positive and keeping a stream of communication going so that you keep yourself on the radar screen of the admissions office without getting a reputation for being one of the pests on the admissions wait list. It's good to keep in touch because you know, the admissions office is aware that some people on the wait list lose interest, right? So some waitlisted candidates go off and they accept another offer, or, you know, they have another plan and they lose interest in going to that school, okay? So the school wants to know, right, if we're going to make an offer, who's going to accept that offer? If they're going to make an offer to someone on the wait list, they want to make it to someone who's going to be excited and going to, you know, grab that opportunity, rather than, you know, being umming and ahhing and maybe not accepted at the end of the day. So showing that you're continuing to be committed, that you're, you know, that school is your #1 choice, and communicating that is helpful for the admissions office, because that's not obvious. There are many waitlisted candidates who do lose interest over the period that they're waitlisted. So, you know, if you can communicate that that's not your case, then that's useful for the admissions committee to know. And then beyond that, you know, maybe it's worth getting an additional recommendation. Not in all cases, but for example, you know, if you have a good relationship with someone who is a member of the school community, and you didn't have, for example, an alum as one of your recommenders for your initial application, then it can be helpful for the admissions committee to get an additional letter of support from someone who is perhaps an alum or a current student or a member of the faculty who knows you well, and can speak to your fit with that community. That additional point of you know, reference can be useful to support your file. So that's something to think about as well. And then, you know, if you haven't visited the campus, visit the campus. And if you know, you can get some airtime with the decision makers, then that can be very helpful. All right. So try to meet with them, or at least get on the phone with someone who is involved in the decision process on the wait list.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of really good advice there, and an interesting take on leveraging some of your existing offers. I think that's something that I didn't consider as an applicant, and could have been a good strategy for me. But I think the main takeaway there is don't be a pest. I think that is good general advice for admissions, but particularly, you know, your experience as a director of admissions, I think you can say with authority that is not something that you want to have. For those students who have and made their decision about where they're going to school, what can they do to prepare themselves during the months leading up to the start of the first year? And at the same time, any other sort of general advice you have for incoming MBAs to make their most of the business school experience?
Yeah. Well, I think, get organized earlier rather than later. So, figure out the logistics, your accommodation, your financing. Too often business schools see that students are coming in and they're stressed because, they've left some of these important details until the last minute. And, I'm sure the incoming candidates, they're all very busy, right? You have to, by your very nature, you have a demanding day job and lots going on. But carve out the time as early as you can to figure out the logistical details and all of your financing, so you're not sweating about that in the weeks running up to starting business school. And then beyond that, think about what are the challenges that you might face when you're at the school. So, for example, if you don't have a strong quantitative background, then take some quant courses before you start. The pace can be very fast at business school. Often, the schools front load the quant courses, so that's going to be pretty demanding at the start. And so, if you can take some online courses on accounting, on finance, on stats, it'll just make you feel that much more comfortable and confident when you start. And that's, that can be really valuable, as I said, for someone who's coming in who doesn't have a strong quant background before they start the program. And then beyond that, I'm sure, as you know, preparing your job search is definitely, a good use of your time before you start the MBA program. The time goes very quickly when you get to campus. Whether you're doing a 1-year or 2-year program, the time will go much faster than you think, and you'll have a lot of demands on your time. And so if you can prepare things like, figuring out which are your target employers, doing some of that research before you get to business school, then, it'll save you some time. And there's so many demands on your time and so many wonderful ways that you can be spending your time in your business school, between the fascinating electives and the clubs and the social opportunities and the travel opportunities. You want to be able to take maximum advantage of those different things that you're going to have and be able to take advantage of it when you get to business school. So invest time up front if you can in preparing your job search, so that you can really hit the ground running when you get to business school. For some candidates, it may be just thinking carefully again about what it is that you want to do post MBA, because you may have convinced business school that you have this very clear vision of your grand plan for your career post business school, but in reality, a lot of students aren't 100% sure what they want to do when they graduate. So investing some more time in reflecting and researching and talking to people in your potential target careers, understanding what the day-to-day life is like in working for Google, working for Facebook, or working for McKinsey, can help you, refine your career vision and get more certainty around, what you want to do when you graduate, and start networking for, potential opportunities for internships as well. That's all of those, relationships that you can build before business school will help to pay dividends. And if you've been admitted to a good school, it can already help to open doors, right? You can tell people, I'm heading off to Harvard or Wharton or Columbia or INSEAD in a few months, and I wanted to chat with you about what it's like to work at X organization, and they will understand that, and often that will help to open doors that might not have been open beforehand. So definitely take advantage of that. One additional thing for people specifically who are heading off to INSEAD, where I used to work, INSEAD has a requirement where you need to have a working knowledge, a basic knowledge of a third language when you graduate. And for some students, they will be taking language classes during the program to fulfill that requirement. And I would encourage you, if at all possible, to work on that before you get to INSEAD. If you can clear that requirement before you get to school, then so much the better. Because if you're trying to juggle language classes on top of all the other things that we've been talking about, then it's another demand on your time, and it's better if you can clear that off your plate before you get to campus.
Yeah, I think we can't stress enough sort of the value of early preparation, and you go through this very rigorous application process to get into business school, and really recruiting is a bit like going through another one, except the people that you're competing against in that case are the other folks who got into business school. So it's sort of the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, any early preparation you can do, that's something we always stress here. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Great.
That is it for the questions that we have for you today, Caroline. I thought you provided a lot of really valuable insight, and particularly your direct experience in admissions was really valuable. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing your insights with our audience.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
All right.